Hey everyone, and welcome to the mid-February update of AI news, drama, and updates. And man, it's been a week. There has been a ton of updates within the chat AI landscape. So we're going to cover a couple of different things, starting with Google and Google Bard. So, so last week we talked about an announcement that may or may not have had something to do with the future of Google. I wasn't really sure at the time. It seemed like kind of an emergency meeting. And the funny part was that it was supposed to happen on the 8th, but then the announcement ended up happening on the 6th, which seemed a little bit rushed. They announced Google Bard, which is the AI chatbot that Google has been touting as the competitor to ChatGPT. Came as a surprise to me as well, and it immediately failed. It immediately spouted some misinformation and basically showed the world that it wasn't quite ready, it wasn't quite up to snuff, or comparatively, it just really wasn't what people would expect. What was interesting to me is to see a lot of these articles being written as if Google software or the UI for everything else Google makes isn't already kind of a mess. And that is kind of a universal truth. Google hardware, Google software, I mean, they have the search functionality down pat. The ad revenue and the way that you can make money from the search functionality, that was what Google was great at. But everything that they've, dipped their feet into in other areas is kind of hit and miss in a lot of areas. And I'm talking about the Google Nexus phone, the Google Home, projects like Google Wave that came and went and really didn't do much. There's a couple of services like Gmail and Google Search that are incredibly important to what we do on the day to day. But unfortunately, Google may not have an actual good competitor to what ChatGPT has, which is, I think, a surprise to a lot of people. So from what I understand in the demonstration, it was asked questions pertaining to the James Webb satellite, and some analysis showed that the questions weren't exactly answered in an accurate fashion, and there's a lot of articles saying that Google's stock has kind of tanked as a result. But in truth, when you're looking at the actual numbers, it really looks like the stock that they've lost is really just kind of some of the stock that people poured in, probably anticipating that the announcement was going to be a bigger deal than what it was. Now, moving on from Bard and the snag that they're currently facing, just after the announcement of Bard, and I'm talking within hours, Microsoft had already made some announcements of their own as far as Bing, ChatGPT's involvement there. And just to recap, this is GPT-4, being one step better than ChatGPT 3 and better in terms of just faster. Bing, for very specific people, now has the ability to, chat with you directly within the search functionality. That said, one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I suppose one of those things that's inevitable in this modern age, is that Bing is giving answers that are sourced from ChatGPT itself, which is really interesting. So you could have potentially misinformation or information that comes from an AI generated unit that gets, picked up and incorporated into the model of another unit or the answers of another unit. So the future is written by AI in a sense. One of the biggest problems with AI in general is that it is a reflection of humanity. And a lot of the things that AI does, whether it's biases, whether it's disinformation, things like that, these are literally just things that it's picking up from us. And it's a, I learned it from watching you, Dad type of situation. So we can get upset at disinformation being sourced from different information. However, the actual source wasn't ChatGPT. The actual source was a human. One thing that we definitely don't want to lose sight of is in the battles between these tech companies, you have to understand that the search of a chat GPT or really just one of these AI models is going to be a much more expensive search from a technological standpoint. Tons of resources, lots of power, lots of computers and servers are all involved with Microsoft services behind the scenes that are going to be running this Bing chatbot. So with that in mind, it's not like you can just run out and test this on your own. Right now, there's very specific people who are able to access this. It looks like iJustine and a number of other people were invited to see a demonstration of what the new Bing looks like. So we'll take a little peek at that here.
You're gonna notice if I type the full query of what I'd like to know in today's search, here's what I get. And so I'll just type in, compare the most influential Mexican artists and their top paintings. And you get what you expect, right? Some links. It's fine, but we can do better. Let's try this now in the new Bing. What you'll see as we pull up is first you see the web results here on the left, but then on the right you start to see how we start to compile the answer. And what you get here now is we have the ability to highlight these web links. We can annotate the results. And that's because we're able to go in and apply our index onto the answers there.
So there you go. It may not be exactly what a lot of people were anticipating. I think a lot of people were thinking of it more as like an interactive chat bot or something like Windows Cortana, which is directly integrated into Microsoft products. It doesn't look like that's the route that they're going. So it is a different approach than what I would have originally anticipated. Still not going to get me to use Bing, but it's interesting to see that there is competition out there. And as far as I'm concerned, the more competition there is out there, the more options that there are for this kind of stuff, the better this technology is going to get and faster. Now, with that in mind, limitations on these systems are going to be things that are going to be topics of the future. The ChatGPT system within Microsoft's AI Bing refused to write a cover letter for somebody, basically telling them that this wasn't fair to other people. It'd be unethical for me to write your cover letter. With biases and moral decisions having to be basically manually programmed into these things, it's going to be really interesting to see who gets to decide what these things are allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. Essentially the future is going to be wild. A lot of people are really trying to get behind what OpenAI was able to pull off so successfully here. And so, especially in areas like China, we're seeing lots and lots of these AI bots, maybe not necessarily on the same level just yet, but attempts to try to follow in those footsteps. One of the biggest names to come out is Alibaba. And you may remember from a previous video, we talked about the Ernie model, which was a stable diffusion-like Chinese model. And that's set up to debut, I believe, in March here. When it comes to Bard, though, China's Baidu said it was testing out a version of their own. And, it looks like they're going to compete step for step with, America, just like they have in other areas. Quora came up with their own AI chatbot called Poe. I'm not a Quora user myself. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked much into this one, but I thought I'd add it to the mix just as another thing that did debut. It seemed like when the announcements came for the Bard system and the Bing ChatGPT version, it just started flowing like water, and everybody wanted to announce who was coming out with what. Now, to touch into the world of drama, we've touched on the power of ChatGPT and AI in general, and now I'm catching word that there are hackers in the AI space, essentially ways that you can prompt engineer and get ChatGPT to do things that it's not supposed to do. So there are methods and workarounds that people have devised, and they're actually selling this to other people. So you could access a jailbroken version of ChatGPT, for example. And through this specific prompt, the things that it's not normally allowed to do, for example, give you a recipe for something dangerous, it would have no problem doing that. These systems are more than capable. They have essentially the compendium of human knowledge, so they know the answers to most of the questions. It's just there's programming that disallows them from kind of sharing some of that information. Because you don't need to know how to enrich uranium at home. So it's not going to share that with you because all you could really do with that is make a nuke. These systems, and the most interesting one I heard about was through Reddit, where you got the ChatGPT system to pretend to be a system called Dan, for example. It stands for like Do Anything Now. And essentially, it would answer a question as both ChatGPT and also as Dan. So you could ask it a question and you could essentially get whatever you want out of the system. So this is a thing that's happening now. It's likely to be stopped probably right away by, of course, the people that own these systems. They're going to catch on to this, especially with news articles popping out about it. So a lot of these systems, I'd imagine, are going to be patched right away. But these are early exploits in what is a very powerful system, and I think we can expect probably more people to at least try to find more ways in. And of course, once you bypass these restrictions, you could have this system do things like create software, create malware. I mean, it gets to a point where you do realize the most dangerous part of AI systems is the human element, both from people misusing it on purpose, on accident, from what it's learned from humanity. Those types of things are essentially able to play out in a more powerful type of format. And having a system this powerful, it's able to create convincing scam letters and things like that, I think that's the future we're headed towards unless we put a stop to it right away. In the world of the lawsuits that are coming, I did promise to keep everybody apprised as much as I can. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Getty Images lawsuit, but I first wanted to talk about the ChatGPT that was used to help decide a case in Colombia. So I think that that's an interesting use of this AI technology. It's just something I thought I'd throw in here. Moving over to the Getty Stability AI suit, it looks like they've done another lawsuit for using specifically 12 million photos imitating famous watermarks, things like that. Um, Again, when it comes to how Stability just trained the model that Runway ML actually put together, I'm very curious what responsibility Stability AI actually has towards the contents of the model, when their function was really just to add compute power and basically train a model from one version to another. You know, a lot of these articles that are coming out think that this is going to set major precedent. It may or may not. We're going to have to see how it plays out. But as always, like I said, I'm going to keep an eye on all of this stuff and I'll keep you guys apprised. As far as new tech in general, it looks like somebody took the technology of the DALL-E style or stable diffusion, latent diffusion essentially, and has applied it to a more real life type of environment. So we've got a robot arm now that's able to do DALL-E style AI drawings in real world canvas. This looks to be taking one of those steps that we'd mentioned before about bringing real world stuff to life without necessarily using copyrighted material. The method that somebody uses for painting, for example, isn't necessarily copyrightable either. So these types of things, maybe even motion capture and things like that, could be eventually used to perfect some of these features. Now, Google did announce something else along with Bard. They announced a feature that's actually been available for a minute. It's only available through the phone and it's available as a multi-search. But essentially, you can take a picture of something and then combine it with the context of words. So this is actually an example. You know, take a picture of some food and you just type near me. It's going to understand that you're looking for that type of food in your immediate area, I would imagine. So that is global. That's available now for everybody. I don't know exactly how useful that is for me personally. It's not, but you know, maybe for other people, that's going to be something that you could really make use out of. Let me know what you think in the comments below if that's something that you'll make use out of. All right, so good news for the gamers. If you loved Morrowind, if you thought it was a classic like I did, there have been some modders who've been hard at work trying to put AI voice acting right into the game. So I have a demonstration here. It looks like just Dagoth so far, but this will give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect.
Many times I have considered offering to share this place with you. I considered offering to accept your oath of service. You might try to buy my trust by giving me Wraithguard, Keening, and Sundun. I thought...
So as you can see, it's a little bit better than you might have expected. It's got a little bit of a personality to it. It's not exactly Microsoft Sam or something like that. But we should see, hopefully, some of the characters expand, and as they continue to work on stuff like that, maybe we can breathe some life into some of these older games. And finishing off here today's story with a little bit of an update on what I'd covered last week, which is the AI Seinfeld. Apparently, it went on a rant, which is very interesting. It did get banned from Twitch. All right, so let me nutshell this for you. Last week, we covered AI Seinfeld. This is an account on Twitch, and it's basically creating a version of the show through AI. The beginning of the show, of course, starts off with a stand-up routine, and the stand-up routine in this instance went on a little bit of a transphobic rant. From what I was able to gather, this runs off of an API, and that API had to fall back to an older version when something didn't go right. And that older version didn't have the same level of content moderation, which allowed this rant to happen. That said, the wording that was used in the rant was interesting because it talked about how, because the AI presented it as if they didn't have a joke to say, so they were just going to go on a transphobic rant, which is an interesting concept when you really do think about it. It doesn't seem to me that the AI was being specifically transphobic, as much as it was maybe even making a meta joke about comedy itself. So it's an interesting concept when you think more and more about it. Regardless, it did get banned. It was not planned. It wasn't something that the creators wanted to happen. So it should be fixed moving forward. But I do encourage people to watch it for themselves and judge what you might think. I'm going to end it again on a weird note, but I appreciate those of you hanging in there. I know it was a little bit of a longer video today, but we had a lot to cover. I do appreciate those of you who are in the comments, liking, subscribing, all that fun algorithm stuff. If you have any questions for me or anything I didn't cover, please leave them in the comments below. But as always, thanks for watching.